You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. And be sure to smash that like button. Big recruiting day today. Caden Durham, the running back out of Texas, picks LSU. Colin Simmons, the edge out of Texas, picks Texas. Shea Dixon of On3 is here with us to talk about it. How are you, Shady?
I'm doing well. It's kind of like a mini signing day, so it's wrapping up.
Any surprises with the decisions today?
I don't think so. Not at the end of the day. We knew that LSU felt good about things coming out of that Bayou Splash recruiting weekend when both these guys, both Caden Durham and Colin Simmons, were there. They simultaneously both said they were ready to make an announcement and do it on the same day ahead of Duncanville and their senior season at Duncanville. And it was a little bit of a surprise to see Simmons push his decision up. A lot of people thought he'd take it to signing day, but Durham had always kind of wanted to get something done before his senior year. And I think if you would have asked me 4 or 5 months ago about Durham, I think it would have been a little bit of a surprise to say, wow, LSU pulled this off now when they put Frank Wilson in charge of getting a running back, and he says, I'm not going after anybody else in America but one person, and that's Durham. I'm not surprised that he pulled it off. He's one of the best recruiters out there.
Right.
But Durham's a kid that, you got to think, yes, he's playing for Duncanville, one of the best teams, high school football teams in the country. They're probably going to repeat as 6A champs in state of Texas, and they've got tons and tons of D1 talent, well beyond these two on the squad, and LSU's never gotten into Duncanville for a recruit. So to go in there and get one guy was a big deal. Then you knew you were up against Oklahoma, and Durham didn't even move to Texas and play at Duncanville until just before his sophomore year. He lived outside of Norman. That's where he grew up in Oklahoma. His mom is a very decorated sprinter for the Sooners. His dad still lives right outside Norman. A lot of his family does. He's got 405 tattooed on his leg. I mean, this is a kid who truly grew up around the OU program, and for Frank Wilson to make the pitch that he did of, here's my track record of producing guys, here's what they've gone on to do in college and the NFL, when Durham stacked that up with DeMarco Murray, who was a great running back in college, running back coach at OU, what kind of his track record was, and those of other schools, there wasn't much of a match, is what Durham said, and that really sold it on him. And when you asked Caden about it today, even when we talked to him, he could reel it off. 10-plus running backs into the league in this amount of years. These guys went on to do this at LSU and then in the NFL. And these guys won Super Bowls. And it was very clear that LSU kind of dug their heels in and said, we're going to get them. And ultimately, they pulled it off.
Hey, Shade, is there a top 100 player overall, obviously top 10 running back? Is there a comp for him, style, body type? I know everyone always asks that question, but anything come to mind?
You know, there was a comp made today. I wish I could grab it for you real quick of kind of what the breakdown was. Maybe I'll look here while I'm talking and give it to you. But Cody Belair is one of our recruiting directors and kind of in charge of rankings and scouting at On3, weighed in. Here you go. Javid Best, if you'll remember him at all, who was a big-time Olympic guy, too. But Best is, probably my age, so he's in his mid-30s now, but for those that can remember, he was a pretty good football player. He was drafted. He was an Olympic track and field guy, and played really well out at Cal whenever he graduated from college and went on to have multiple years in the NFL as a first-round pick into the first round. But he stacked up their kind of production coming out of high school, and then what they've done track-wise. And you look at Caden Durham; he's also 5'10", 200. But we're talking about a kid who he runs a sub 4.4, but he's got a handful of sub 10 threes in the 100, which for non-track people who don't know, that's absolutely ridiculous for, a skinny kid to run, not even a 5'10", 200-plus pounder. Got plenty of sub 21 5s in the 200, so he's got some extra burst to him. This is a guy who track, he's got an LSU offer. Football, he's got an LSU offer. He plans to do both. So it's rare. I can't remember LSU. Maybe you can correct me, but LSU having a running back that, beyond Trendon Holiday, I guess, running back receiver, that did both in college, and Durham's set to do that.
Shea Dixon's with us from On3 the Bengal Tigers on Twitter at Shea Dixon. Okay, let's talk about Simmons, the one they didn't get. Obviously, the best edge in the country. What ultimately swayed Simmons to commit to the Longhorns instead of LSU?
I summed it up as this. I thought that Texas was going to have to do everything they could to get him. And when I was talking to some people about it on the Texas side, they said, here, I'll try to make you understand how big of a need this is to Texas. This is Leonard Fournette to them. This is the number one prospect in the country. This is, if you don't get him, heads will roll type situation. You've had multiple years. And then they pointed out a reality that I didn't realize. In the past decade, the state of Texas has only produced 2 5-star edge rushers. That's pretty surprising to think about. Neither of them went to Texas. One of them was Miles Garrett, who obviously went to A&M. The other, Clayton Smith, who went to Oklahoma. And across those 10 years, only one time did Texas sign the number one player in Texas, and that was a number of years back, B.J. Foster, who's a safety. So to couple a 5-star edge rusher and the number one overall prospect in Texas, which Simmons is both, made it a must for Texas. And I'm not surprised that LSU held some high confidence coming out of that Bayou Splash weekend when they had both Caden Durham on campus, and Simmons did not visit anywhere else that week in between dead periods, and it then said, hey, I'm going to announce in 10 days. And everyone thought, okay, LSU's in a pretty good spot here, but what is Texas going to come back with in terms of surging? And they did just that. And I know some people will point to NIL. I think that really it's the comfort of both being close to home. He said his mother, he's got a brother who's autistic. He didn't really want to leave too far home. This gives him a chance to not be too far of a drive from South Dallas to Austin. But he also gave the quote, and he said, hey, look, I wanted to be able to take care of my mom and brother, and Texas stepped up and is providing me that opportunity. So whether that's NIL promises, whatever it might be, I just think that at the end of the day, there was no way Texas was going to lose this one. Whereas people on the Texas side said, heads are going to roll in that building. And as a staff, whenever you've got that kind of pressure on you, not just to win games, but go out and get the number one player in your state, and your hit rate is 1 of 10 over the past decade, it becomes all the more paramount that you've got to find a way to pull it off.
I love the comp with what Leonard Fournette meant to that LSU class, because you're 100% right. That was a you will get this kid or else type thing. All right, what does that mean for LSU, Shea, as we look at the class right now? I would assume, obviously, if you can get Colin Simmons, anybody would take him, but is LSU in need of an edge or multiple players at that position in this class?
I don't know about multiple, because we're still seeing, look, they signed a 5-star edge in Deshaun Womack this past cycle. It was just, now we're wondering, is he more of a D-end or an edge? And
right.
Either way is fine, because he's a great player. I think right now, we've been out there. He's getting used to the heat, the conditioning, and all of that. Give him a month, and I think that he will be just fine. He's a phenomenal player. But they also signed Jackson Howard. They signed Dylan Carpenter out of Santa Monica. So they do have some edge rushers. Now, they did go a bit of Colin Simmons or bust, right, where other edge rushers were interested, and they focused in on Simmons. Did they kind of circle back and go to some of those other guys? We'll see. I do think that with the addition of Durham, it's becoming a very, very impressive class in regards to, A, addressing a lot of the needs, but B, the majority of these 24 commitments are really good players. And when you look at the On3 rankings right now, LSU just jumped from 10 all the way up to 6. So they're sitting behind just Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, Florida, and Florida State. So they've put themselves right back in the mix to where a month ago people were wondering, is LSU recruiting going to heat up? They're not even in the top 15. This is foreign territory. And I just said, let's be patient. And sure enough, they reeled off 5 or 6 pretty big commitments. And for me, I just turn and look now and say, okay, well, Texas just locked up the number one player in their state. Does LSU do the same? And Dominic McKinley out of Acadiana is a 5-star. He is a defensive lineman. And maybe more importantly than edge rusher for LSU, he's a defensive tackle. And they have not stacked up at that position recently. And we've seen them on the field relying on just a handful of guys last year. I mean, Makai Lingo and Roy were having to carry them. Now we're seeing Guillory as kind of that pure nose that they're working this year. And they had to go really heavy in the portal to get guys who could even be backups and more options to the guys beyond the starters. So to not hit on a guy like that would sting in a big way. So if I'm LSU, I'm doing all I can to make sure not only the number one player in the state and a 5-star stays home, but a guy that's a big position of need. And he's set to announce, I don't know, do the math, September 1st, a few weeks, whenever Acadiana kicks off their season.
Do you have any sense on McKinley? I know he told Sam Spiegelman there with On3, he's down to Oklahoma, A&M, Texas, LSU, and Ohio State. And any sense, Shea, how that's going?
I think that all of those schools probably have a little bit of confidence, in large part because 4 of them, not LSU included, LSU doesn't typically do official visits for in-state kids during the summer. They like to save those to closer to signing day. But he took his official visits to those 4 schools. So I think that's what's got them all in the mix there. I think that when you look at the reality of Ohio State, he's been very high on them quietly, but that's pretty far from home, and family is a big deal to him as well. I also think that just kind of the structure that Brian Kelly has in terms of selling both education and playing for championships is something that's really resonating with the McKinley family. And the more that LSU kind of pitches that and gets around them and makes them that priority, the better I would feel about LSU. I will say that because of those summer visits, that even if you were talking to LSU sources, they would say, hey, look, we had to play from behind a little bit here, but you've got a few weeks, and then after that, I guess 4 months until signing day, but somehow, some way, they absolutely have to find a way to get this one done. So I think that I would be a little surprised if they couldn't, whether it is on September 1st or whether it's in December, if they're not signing Dominic McKinley. That would kind of surprise me a bit.
He's on Twitter at Shea Dixon, On3 the Bengal Tiger. It is Cruton season. I guess it's always Cruton season, Shady. We appreciate the time as always, man. Thank you.
I'd say that's why all these coaches go in the NFL. Recruiting season never stops. I mean, this is nonstop here.
We appreciate it, man. Thanks.
Later, Matt.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.